Billionaire never wanted a family, until his one-night affair showed up with his newborn baby boy. Before we begin, drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. And once the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10.
Give me a gun.
Oh, and make sure to follow our channel for more stories like this. Now, sit back and enjoy every detail. The glass elevator climbed through the heart of downtown Seattle, carrying Rhett Calloway to his domain on the 42nd floor. He stood motionless, his steel-gray eyes fixed on the city sprawling below, while his fingers adjusted platinum cufflinks with mechanical precision. At 39, Rhett had mastered the art of appearing untouchable, every gesture calculated, every expression controlled. The elevator doors whispered open to reveal the pristine lobby of Calloway Holdings. His assistant, Nolan, approached with a tablet and an expression that suggested controlled urgency. "Your 10 o'clock canceled," Nolan reported, his voice crisp and professional. "The Meridian investors want to reschedule for Thursday, and legal needs your signature on the Barcelona acquisition." Rhett nodded curtly, accepting the tablet without breaking stride toward his corner office. The morning routine was sacred: coffee black, emails sorted by priority, phone calls limited to 5 minutes maximum. No exceptions, no deviations. His office was a monument to success and solitude. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of Elliott Bay, while minimalist furniture in charcoal and chrome spoke of wealth without warmth. Awards and patents lined one wall, each one a testament to his brilliance in biomedical technology. Everything in its place, everything under control. Rhett settled behind his desk, the Italian leather chair conforming to his frame as he reviewed quarterly projections. Numbers were clean, predictable. Unlike people, they never lied or disappointed. His biomedical patents had revolutionized cardiac surgery, making him wealthy beyond imagination. More importantly, they had given him the freedom to live exactly as he chose, alone. A soft knock interrupted his concentration. Nolan appeared in the doorway, hesitation flickering across his usually composed features. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's personal. Very personal." Rhett's jaw tightened. "You know the policy. No walk-ins. Security should have..." "She mentioned Austin, sir, the biotech conference from last year." The words hit Rhett like ice water. Austin. For a moment, his perfectly controlled facade wavered. Memories he had buried deep began to surface. A conference room filled with brilliant minds, a presentation that had impressed him, and later a hotel room where control had abandoned him completely. Harper. He remembered her with startling clarity. Auburn hair that caught the light, hazel eyes that challenged him intellectually before they challenged him in other ways. She had been different from the others. Unimpressed by his wealth, undaunted by his reputation. For one night, he had allowed himself to be simply a man, not an empire. "What does she want?" Rhett's voice was carefully neutral, but his pulse had quickened. "She didn't say, sir. She's in conference room B with a baby." The words landed like a physical blow. Rhett felt the world tilt slightly, his legendary composure cracking at the edges. A baby. In his building. With Harper. He rose slowly, his legs feeling unsteady for the first time in years. The walk to conference room B felt endless, each step echoing in the marble hallway. Through the glass doors he could see her, Harper Ellison, exactly as he remembered, yet somehow different. She sat with her back straight, cradling a small bundle against her chest. Rhett paused at the threshold, his hand frozen on the door handle. Whatever lay beyond this moment would change everything. He had built his life on the foundation of no surprises, no complications, no emotional entanglements. But as he watched Harper gently rock the baby in her arms, he realized that some forces were beyond even his control. The door opened, and Harper looked up to meet his eyes. In that instant, 8 months collapsed into nothing. The baby, his son, he somehow knew with terrifying certainty, gazed at him with eyes the exact shade of gray as his own. Harper's voice was steady, professional, cutting through the silence like a blade. "Hello, Rhett. We need to talk. Have you ever had a moment that changed everything? A single encounter that shattered the walls you spent years building? What would you do if your past walked through your door, holding the future you never knew you wanted?" The conference room felt smaller than it was, the air thick with unspoken tension. Rhett closed the door behind him, his movements deliberate despite the chaos raging in his mind. Harper sat across from him, the baby nestled against her shoulder, tiny fingers curled around a soft blue blanket. She looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that spoke of sleepless nights and endless worry. Yet there was something fierce in her posture, a quiet strength that he remembered from that night in Austin. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a navy dress that was professional but clearly off the rack. No designer labels, no jewelry except for a simple silver watch. "His name is Elijah," Harper said without preamble, her voice steady but soft to avoid disturbing the sleeping child. "He's 8 months old, born on March 15th at Swedish Medical Center." Rhett remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back. The math was simple. March meant conception in June. The biotech conference had been June 12th. He felt his chest tighten as the reality settled over him like lead. "Why now?" His voice was rougher than he intended. 8 months, Harper. Why wait 8 months? She shifted the baby slightly, and Rhett caught a glimpse of the child's profile, the strong jawline that mirrored his own, the shock of dark hair. His heart hammered against his ribs. "I needed time," Harper replied, meeting his gaze directly. "Time to figure out if I could do this alone. Time to make sure I wasn't coming to you out of desperation or some misguided hope for something that was never going to happen. And your conclusion? I can do it alone." Her chin lifted slightly. "I have been doing it alone. I have a good job, a small apartment in Fremont. Elijah is healthy, happy. He doesn't need anything from you." The words stung more than they should have. "Then why are you here?" Harper was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing gentle circles on the baby's back. When she spoke, her voice was softer, more vulnerable, "Because I kept thinking about my father. How he never knew I existed until I was 16 and tracked him down myself. How angry I was that my mother had made that choice for both of us." She looked down at Elijah, then back at Rhett. "I didn't want to make that same decision. Whatever kind of man you are, whatever kind of father you might or might not be, that should be your choice to make." Rhett moved closer, his steps measured. The baby stirred slightly, and Harper began a gentle swaying motion that seemed instinctual. He found himself studying the child's features with an intensity that surprised him. The curve of the ears, the shape of the nose, the way Elijah's mouth moved slightly in sleep. "You're certain he's mine?" "I'm certain." Harper's voice carried no defensiveness, just quiet certainty. "But I understand if you want proof. I brought copies of his birth certificate and medical records. We can arrange for DNA testing if that's what you need." Rhett had built his empire on verification, on facts and figures and legal documentation. But looking at this child, at Elijah, he felt something shift inside him. The resemblance was undeniable, but it was more than that. Something primitive and fundamental was stirring, a recognition that went deeper than logic. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "Nothing." The word came without hesitation. "I'm not here for money, Rhett. I'm not here for marriage or some fairy tale ending. I make enough to support us. We're fine." "Then what?" Harper stood slowly, cradling Elijah against her chest. The baby's eyes fluttered open, steel gray, exactly like his father's, and fixed on Rhett with the curious, unfocused gaze of infancy. "I want you to know he exists," she said simply. "I want you to know that he's smart and strong and he laughs when I sing to him. I want you to know that he has your eyes and your stubborn streak. And then I want you to decide, for yourself, not because of obligation or pressure or guilt, whether you want to be part of his life." Rhett felt something crack inside his chest as he stared into those familiar gray eyes. This tiny person, this unexpected consequence of a moment he had tried so hard to forget, was staring back at him with perfect trust. Elijah reached out with one small hand, fingers grasping at the air between them. Without thinking, Rhett extended his index finger. Elijah's tiny fist closed around it with surprising strength, and Rhett felt his carefully constructed world shift on its axis. "He needs to eat soon," Harper said quietly, breaking the spell. "I should go." She moved toward the door, but Rhett's voice stopped her. "Harper." She turned back, and for a moment he saw past her composure to the uncertainty beneath. She was scared too, he realized. Scared of his rejection, scared of what this conversation might cost her. "How do I reach you?" She pulled a business card from her purse and placed it on the conference table. "My number's on there." "But Rhett," she paused, her voice growing firm again. "Don't call unless you mean it. He's too little to understand disappointment now, but he won't always be. If you're going to walk away, do it now." The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving Rhett alone with the lingering scent of baby powder and the weight of a decision that would define the rest of his life. He stared at the business card on the table, Harper's name printed in simple black letters. Outside the window, Seattle continued its relentless pace, unaware that everything had changed. Rhett Calloway had spent 39 years avoiding exactly this kind of complication. Now he had less than 24 hours to decide if he was ready to become the one thing he'd never wanted to be: a father. Rhett's penthouse apartment had always been his sanctuary, 30 floors above the chaos of the city, wrapped in silence and expensive minimalism. Tonight, it felt like a prison. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, a tumbler of aged scotch untouched in his hand, watching the lights of Seattle blur together in the darkness. 48 hours had passed since Harper walked out of his conference room, and he hadn't slept more than an hour at a time. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those steel-gray eyes staring back at him, tiny fingers wrapped around his own. His phone buzzed on the marble counter. Nolan's name appeared on the screen. The Meridian meeting got moved to tomorrow. Nolan's voice was carefully neutral. And legal called about the Barcelona contracts. They need your review by... Cancel everything, Rhett said, surprising himself with the words. Sir? Tomorrow. Cancel everything tomorrow. There was a pause. In 5 years of working together, Rhett had never canceled a full day of meetings. Are you feeling all right? Rhett almost laughed. All right. He was falling apart at the molecular level, but sure. I'm fine, just handle it. After ending the call, he found himself walking to his home office. A room lined with leather-bound books he'd never read, and awards that suddenly felt hollow. He sat at his computer, and after a moment's hesitation, opened a browser window. Child development 8 months, he typed. The search results flooded his screen. Articles about motor skills and feeding schedules, sleep patterns, and first words. He clicked through page after page, absorbing information he'd never thought he'd need. Somewhere around midnight, he was reading about the importance of paternal bonding when his phone rang. Harper's name on the caller ID made his pulse spike. Rhett, her voice was strained, exhausted. I'm sorry to call so late, but can you drive? Do you have a car? What's wrong? Elijah has a fever. It spiked to 102 and won't come down. I called my pediatrician and she said to take him to the ER, but my car won't start. And the cab company said it could be 40 minutes and I'm coming. Rhett was already moving toward his keys, the scotch abandoned. What's your address? You don't have to. Harper, address. She rattled off an address in Fremont, and Rhett was in the elevator before she finished speaking. His Aston Martin roared to life in the parking garage, and he found himself breaking every speed limit between downtown and the modest neighborhood where Harper lived. Her apartment building was a converted craftsman house, the kind of place young professionals lived before they could afford something better. He took the steps to the second floor 2 at a time and knocked on the door marked 2B. Harper opened it immediately, as if she'd been waiting by the window. She had changed into jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. Elijah was in her arms, wrapped in the same blue blanket from the conference room, his face flushed with fever. Thank you, she breathed, grabbing a diaper bag from a chair by the door. I know this isn't... I didn't know who else to call. Rhett found himself studying the baby's face with an intensity that surprised him. Even sick, Elijah was beautiful. Delicate features that somehow managed to look strong, thick lashes that any woman would envy. When the baby's eyes opened and fixed on him, Rhett felt that same jolt of recognition. How long has he been like this? Since about 6. I've been giving him baby Tylenol, but it's not helping. Harper's voice cracked slightly. He's never been this sick before. I don't know if I'm overreacting or... You're not. Rhett took the diaper bag from her hands. Come on. The drive to Swedish Medical Center was tense and quiet, except for Elijah's occasional fussing. Harper sat in the passenger seat, murmuring soft reassurances to the baby, while Rhett navigated the empty late-night streets with precision. He found himself stealing glances at them in the rearview mirror, struck by how natural Harper looked as a mother, how completely she seemed to understand what the baby needed. The emergency room was bright and sterile, filled with the kind of people who ended up in hospitals at 1 in the morning. A construction worker with a bandaged hand, an elderly woman clutching her chest, a teenager with his worried parents hovering nearby. Harper checked in at the front desk while Rhett found seats in a quiet corner. It might be a while, she said, settling beside him with Elijah still feverish in her arms. Thank you for bringing us. I can call a cab when... I'm staying. She looked at him with surprise. You don't have to do that. I know. They sat in companionable silence, watching the controlled chaos of the emergency room. A nurse called out names, doctors moved with purposeful urgency, and somewhere down the hall, a baby was crying. Harper began humming softly, something Rhett didn't recognize but found oddly comforting. Is that what you sing to him?
Yeah, I'm
He
honestly
asked
not
quietly.
a fan
Harper nodded. My grandmother used to hum it to me when I was little. I don't even remember the
of the
words
new
anymore, just the
storm.
melody. Elijah's breathing
We
seemed
have
to ease
Boss
slightly
down
at the
below.
familiar sound. Rhett watched the baby's face relax, tiny features smoothing into something
how we
approaching
doing
peace
today?
despite the fever. How do you know what to do? The question escaped before he could stop it. Harper smiled sadly. I don't, most of the time. I'm just making it up as I go along, hoping I don't mess him up too badly. But you seem so natural at it. Do I? She looked down at Elijah, brushing a strand of dark hair away from his forehead. I spent the first 3 months crying almost as much as he did. I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't, really. But you figure it out because you have to. Because someone needs you to figure it out. Rhett felt something twist in his
you
chest
kidding
at her
me?
words. Someone needs you. When was the last time anyone had truly needed him? His employees needed his decisions, his investors needed his vision. But this was different. This was raw, immediate, essential. Elijah Calloway? A nurse called from the doorway. Harper stood, then paused. I gave him my last name, Elijah Ellison. Oh. Rhett felt an unexpected stab of disappointment. But if you want, she hesitated. If you decide you want to be part of this, we could talk about that. Their eyes met, and for a moment the noisy emergency room faded away. Rhett saw hope in her expression, carefully hidden but unmistakably there, and he realized that somewhere between the phone call and this moment, something fundamental had shifted. He wasn't just making a decision about whether to be a father. He was making a decision about who he wanted to be. The pediatric examination room smelled like disinfectant and something vaguely sweet,
so tired of
maybe the
snipers.
remnants of a lollipop from an earlier patient. Dr. Morrison, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steady hands, examined Elijah with practiced efficiency, while Harper held him still on the examination table. Rhett stood
wow,
against
I
the
was gonna
far
get into
wall,
that.
trying to
Drive
stay out
into
of the
the
way
thing.
while simultaneously absorbing every detail.
don't think it's
The
worth it.
baby's cries were sharp
Take a
and
break
distressed,
before I even-
nothing like the soft fussing he'd heard in the car. Each wail seemed to pierce straight through him, creating an unfamiliar urgency he couldn't quite name. Ear infection, Dr. Morrison announced, clicking off her otoscope. Pretty common at this age. The fever should break once we get some antibiotics in him. Relief flooded Harper's face. So he's going to be okay? He'll be fine. Cranky for a few days, but fine. The doctor scribbled on a prescription pad. Give him this twice a day with food. The pharmacy downstairs is open 24 hours. As they gathered their things, Elijah's cries gradually subsided into exhausted whimpers. Harper bounced him gently while Rhett carried the diaper bag, a role that felt both foreign and oddly natural.
Santa!
I can take a cab from here, Harper said as they stepped into the elevator. You've done enough. My car's right outside. Rhett, it's 3 in the
Okay, the
morning.
last game I came
You have
over
work
here,
out? No, I
Santa wasn't
don't.
here.
The words surprised him.
About,
I
like,
canceled
the,
everything tomorrow. She looked at him curiously but didn't ask why. The drive back to Harper's apartment was
trying to get a
quieter.
present from
Elijah had
Santa.
fallen into a fitful
day.
sleep, occasionally stirring with small sounds of discomfort. Rhett found himself checking the rearview mirror more often than necessary, watching the rise and
maybe Santa
fall
was
of the
gonna give me
baby's
a
chest.
present.
When they reached her building, Harper turned to thank
Ask
him, but
him
Rhett was already
for
getting
aim
out of the
assist.
car.
Seriously.
You don't have to walk us
Jersey
up,
Newfie.
she protested.
Good morning
I
to
know.
you.
Her apartment was small but warm, filled with the kind of comfortable clutter that spoke of an actual life being lived. Books stacked on end tables, a laptop open on a desk by the window, baby toys scattered across a colorful playmat. Photos lined the mantel of her electric fireplace.
let's take that.
Harper with friends, an older woman who might have been her mother, and several of Elijah at various stages of his short life. Can I? Rhett
boss
hesitated,
icon was
then
right
forged
over here.
ahead. Can I help? Harper paused in the process of settling Elijah into a portable crib near the couch. Help with what? Whatever needs to be done. The medicine
I don't
or,
know which
I don't
boss
know,
they
anything.
picked up.
She studied his face for a long moment as if searching
able
for
to see
something.
that.
Whatever she found there seemed to satisfy her because she nodded slowly. He'll need his next dose in 4 hours. And he gets hungry when he's sick, so I'll probably be up every 2 hours feeding him. Rhett shrugged off his suit jacket and hung it over the back of a chair. Then I'll stay up too. Rhett, you don't understand. It's not just tonight. This is what it's like. The sleepless nights, the worry, the constant. I want to understand.
Jersey Newfie, how
The
we
simple
doing today?
honesty in his voice seemed to
Happy
surprise them
Friday.
both. Harper sank onto the couch, suddenly looking as exhausted as she probably felt. Why? She asked quietly. Rhett sat on the other end of the couch, careful not to crowd her space. Because 2 days ago I didn't know he existed, and now I can't stop thinking about him. About what would have happened if you hadn't come to tell me. About what kind of man that would have made me. You didn't know, but you did. You've been doing this alone for 8 months and you didn't have to tell me at all. You could have just handled it, like you've been handling everything else. Harper pulled a throw pillow into her lap, hugging it against her chest. I thought about it. Not telling you, I mean. It would have been easier. Why didn't you? Because she looked over at Elijah, sleeping peacefully despite his illness. Because I grew up without a father, and I always wondered what that said about me. Was I not worth staying for? Was I too much trouble? I didn't want him to ever wonder those things. Rhett felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of defenses he'd maintained for so long he'd forgotten they were there. What happened? With your father?
Wait, they're
Nothing
bubble
dramatic.
too?
He and my mom had a fling when she was in graduate school. When she found out she was pregnant, she decided she could handle it alone. She never even told him about me. Harper's voice was matter-of-fact, but Rhett could hear the old hurt underneath. I tracked him down when I was 16. He was married, had 2 other kids. Nice enough guy, but I was just this complication from his past. This reminder of a mistake. You're not a mistake. The words came out more forcefully than he'd intended. Harper looked at him in surprise. Neither is Elijah, he continued, his voice softer now. Whatever else this is, whatever happens between us, he's not a mistake. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the baby's soft breathing and the distant sounds of the city waking up outside. Rhett found himself studying Harper's profile in the dim light from the kitchen, remembering how she'd looked that night in Austin. Confident, brilliant, unimpressed by his reputation. She looked different now, softer somehow, but no less strong. I don't know how to do this, he admitted quietly. Do what? Any of it. Be a father. Be present. I've spent my whole life avoiding exactly this kind of responsibility. Harper turned to face him fully. Why? It was such a simple question, but it cut straight to the heart of everything he'd been running from. Rhett was quiet for so long that Harper probably thought he wouldn't answer. Because everyone I've ever cared about has left, he said finally. My parents died when I was 12, foster care, then college, where I learned that relationships were just distractions from what really mattered. Then business, where I learned that emotional attachments were weaknesses that could be exploited. So you decided not to have any. It seemed logical at the time. Elijah stirred in his sleep, making a soft sound that was somewhere between a sigh and a whimper. Without thinking, Harper stood and went to him, placing a gentle hand on his back until he settled again. The gesture was so natural, so instinctive that it took Rhett's breath away. You're not alone anymore, she said quietly, not turning around. Whether you decide to be part of his life or not, you're not alone in the world. You have a son. That changes things whether you want it to or not. Rhett stood and moved to stand beside her, looking down at the sleeping baby. Elijah had kicked off his blanket, tiny fists curled near his face. Even sick, even exhausted, he was perfect. I want to try, Rhett said. I don't know if I'll be any good at it, but I want to try. Harper met his eyes. It's not something you can try halfway. Kids need consistency. They need to know you'll be there. Then I'll be there. The promise hung between them, heavy with possibility and fear. Outside, the first hints of dawn were creeping across the Seattle sky, and somewhere in the distance, a garbage truck was making its rounds. Normal life, continuing despite the fact that everything had changed. Elijah opened his eyes and looked directly at Rhett, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. And for the first time in his adult life, Rhett Calloway felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. 3 weeks had passed since that night at the hospital, and Rhett's life had developed a rhythm he never could have imagined. Tuesday evenings at Harper's apartment, Saturday mornings at the park, Sunday grocery runs where he found himself learning the difference between organic and regular baby food, between size 3 and size 4 diapers. This particular Thursday afternoon found him sitting on Harper's living room floor, a bottle of formula in one hand and Elijah cradled awkwardly in his other arm. The baby was fussing, pushing the bottle away with surprising strength for someone so small. He's not hungry, Harper called from the kitchen where she was packing her laptop bag for a client meeting. Try burping him. Rhett shifted Elijah to his shoulder, patting the baby's back with the same methodical precision he applied to everything else in his life. It wasn't working. Elijah's cries grew more insistent, his tiny body rigid with frustration. I don't think I'm doing this right. Rhett admitted, his confidence crumbling in the face of an 8-month-old's disapproval. Harper emerged from the kitchen, checking her watch. Here, let me... No. Rhett's voice was firmer than he intended. You have your meeting. I said I'd watch him, and I meant it. She hesitated, clearly torn between her professional obligations and her protective instincts. Rhett, it's okay to ask for help. This takes practice. Then I need to practice. Something in his tone must have convinced her, because she grabbed her keys and headed for the door. I'll be back in 2 hours. There's extra formula in the fridge, and his favorite toy is the blue elephant. If he gets really upset, Harper. Rhett looked up at her, Elijah still crying in his arms. We'll be fine. After she left, the apartment felt bigger somehow, and quieter despite Elijah's protests. Rhett tried walking, tried changing positions, tried making the ridiculous faces he'd seen Harper make. Nothing worked. Finally, in desperation, he began to hum. He didn't recognize the melody at first. Something half-remembered from childhood. Maybe something his mother had sung to him before the accident. Gradually, Elijah's cries subsided into hiccups, then into curious silence. Better? Rhett asked softly. Elijah stared up at him with those familiar gray eyes, and for a moment, Rhett forgot about everything else. The board meetings he'd rescheduled, the acquisition deals on hold, the investors who'd been calling Nolan with increasing frequency. None of it seemed to matter when he was looking into his son's face. His son. The thought still felt foreign, like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. Elijah reached up with one small hand, fingers grasping at the air between them. Rhett extended his finger, and the baby's grip was surprisingly strong, surprisingly warm. They stayed like that for several minutes, connected by something more profound than Rhett had words for. The sound of a key in the door made them both turn. Harper entered, cheeks flushed from the cold, looking surprised to find them sitting peacefully on the couch. How did it go? She asked, dropping her bag by the door. Good, I think. He cried for a while, but then Rhett trailed off, not sure how to explain what had happened. But then you figured it out. Harper sat beside them, close enough that Rhett caught a hint of her perfume, something light and floral that reminded him of that night in Austin. How was your meeting? Productive. Landed a new contract with a startup in Bellevue. She reached over to stroke Elijah's cheek. Did you miss Mommy, little man? Elijah gurgled happily, clearly content in the presence of both his parents. The words stopped Rhett cold. Parents. Plural. When had he started thinking of himself that way? I've been thinking, Harper said, settling back against the couch cushions, about what you said the other night, about wanting to be consistent. Rhett felt his stomach tighten. And I think we need to talk about what that looks like, practically speaking. She was right, of course. They'd been dancing around the edges of a bigger conversation for weeks, content to exist in this strange limbo where Rhett was present, but not quite committed, involved, but not quite responsible. What do you want it to look like? He asked. Harper was quiet for a moment, watching Elijah play with the buttons on Rhett's shirt. I want him to know his father, not as a visitor or a weekend obligation, but as someone who's really part of his life. But I need to know that you're in this for the right reasons. Not because you feel guilty, or because you think it's what you're supposed to do. Kids can sense that kind of thing. Rhett shifted Elijah to his lap, letting the baby grab at his fingers. What would be the right reasons? Because you love him. Because you can't imagine not being part of his life. Because when you look at him, you see possibility instead of obligation. The words hung between them, a challenge and an invitation all at once. Rhett looked down at Elijah, who was now attempting to gnaw on his thumb with two tiny teeth. I don't know if I know how to love someone, he said quietly. Not the way you mean. I've spent so long avoiding it that I'm not sure I'd recognize it if I felt it. Harper's expression softened. What do you feel when you look at him? Rhett considered the question seriously. Terrified, he said finally. Completely terrified. And protective. Like I'd do anything to keep him safe, even though I barely know what I'm doing. That sounds like love to me. Does it? The terrified part especially. Love makes you vulnerable. It makes you worry about someone else's happiness more than your own. Elijah chose that moment to grab a fistful of Rhett's shirt and pull himself up to a standing position on Rhett's thighs. His legs wobbled with the effort, but he grinned triumphantly, showing off those two perfect teeth. He's getting stronger, Rhett observed, steadying the baby with gentle hands. He'll be walking soon, crawling everywhere, getting into everything. It only gets more complicated from here. Good, Rhett surprised himself by saying. I want to see what he becomes. Harper smiled, the first genuinely happy expression he'd seen from her in weeks. So what does that mean? For us, I mean. For this arrangement. Rhett looked around the small apartment, taking in the toys scattered across the floor, the high chair in the corner, the photos of Elijah's milestones lining the mantel. This was Elijah's world, his home, but it was also Harper's world, and increasingly, it was becoming Rhett's too. It means I want to be here, he said. Not just for visits or emergencies. I want to be part of his daily life, part of your daily life if you'll let me. Rhett, I know this isn't what either of us planned. I know you didn't come to me looking for a relationship, but we're in this together now, whether we like it or not. And I think maybe I want to figure out what that means. Elijah babbled something that might have been da-da, or might have been nothing at all. But when he looked up at Rhett with those gray eyes full of trust and possibility, Rhett felt something click into place. Maybe Harper was right. Maybe this was what love felt like. This fierce protectiveness. This willingness to rearrange his entire life around someone else's needs. Maybe he'd been running from the right thing all along. The Seattle Children's Museum was bustling with families on this rainy Saturday morning, the sound of children's laughter echoing off the colorful walls. Rhett pushed Elijah's stroller through the crowd, feeling distinctly out of place among the other parents in their comfortable jeans and sneakers. Even dressed down in khakis and a pullover, he still looked like what he was, a man more comfortable in boardrooms than playrooms. Harper walked beside him, pointing out exhibits to Elijah, who was wide-eyed at all the activity around him. At 10 months old, he was sitting up confidently now, babbling constantly in what sounded almost like conversation. The water play area is supposed to be good for his age, Harper said, consulting the museum map. Though he'll probably get soaked. That's what the extra clothes are for, right? Rhett had learned to pack a diaper bag with military precision, backup outfits, extra bottles, enough supplies for any conceivable emergency. They found a spot near the water table and Harper lifted Elijah from his stroller. He immediately reached for the floating toys, splashing happily as water soaked the front of his shirt. Other toddlers played nearby, their parents chatting easily about school districts and sleep schedules. First time here? A woman about Harper's age appeared beside them, watching her own daughter navigate an elaborate water maze. Yes, Harper replied. We're still figuring out the best spots for this age group. Oh, it gets easier. How old? 10 months. The woman smiled at Elijah, who grinned back with his 4 teeth on full display. He's adorable. Looks just like his daddy. Rhett felt a flush of unexpected pride at the casual recognition. The woman didn't know who he was, didn't care about his net worth or his company. To her, he was just another father spending Saturday morning with his family. His family. The phrase was getting easier to think, if not to say out loud. "Dada!" Elijah suddenly called out, reaching toward Rhett with wet hands. The sound stopped Rhett cold. It was clear, unmistakable, intentional, not babbling or coincidence, but his first real word. Harper's eyes widened and she looked at Rhett with surprise and something that might have been joy. Did he just... Rhett couldn't finish the question. "Dada? Dada?" Elijah repeated, bouncing in Harper's arms with excitement at the reaction he was getting. Rhett took a step closer, and Elijah reached for him again, this time with more urgency. When Rhett lifted him from Harper's arms, the baby nestled against his chest with complete trust, still chanting "Dada," like he'd discovered the most important word in the world. His first word, Harper said softly, and Rhett could hear the emotion in her voice. They stayed at the museum for 2 hours, moving from exhibit to exhibit as Elijah's attention wandered. Rhett found himself relaxing into the rhythm of it, following the baby's lead, cleaning up messes, preventing tiny disasters before they happened. When Elijah got cranky, Rhett was the one who knew to offer the pacifier. When he dropped his favorite toy, Rhett was there to retrieve it. It was exhausting and wonderful, and completely unlike anything in his previous experience. On the drive back to Harper's apartment, Elijah fell asleep in his car seat, exhausted from his big morning. Harper was quiet, staring out the passenger window at the gray Seattle sky. "Everything okay?" Rhett asked. She nodded, but didn't speak for several minutes. When she finally did, her voice was careful, controlled. "He's getting attached to you. Is that a problem?" "It could be." She turned to look at him. "This is real now, Rhett. Not just visits or helping out when I need it. He knows who you are. He's counting on you to be here." Rhett felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. "I am here." For how long? The question hung between them like a challenge. Rhett pulled into a parking space outside Harper's building but didn't turn off the engine. "What do you want me to say?" he asked.
Hello, sir.
"I want you to say forever.
Good morning.
I want you to
Good
promise that you'll never get tired of this, never decide it's too complicated, never realize you'd rather go back to your old life." Her voice cracked slightly. "But I know that's not
How's
fair
the
to
rain
ask."
going for you
Rhett
today?
turned off the car and shifted to face her fully.
Good.
"Harper,
I just
look at me."
started
She did,
technically
and he could
yesterday
see the
with
fear
our
there,
stream, and
carefully hidden but unmistakable. Fear that he would leave, that Elijah would grow up disappointed, that she would have to explain to her son why his father had decided fatherhood wasn't for him after all. 3 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be spending my Saturday mornings at children's museums, I would have laughed them out of the room, Rhett said. If they'd told me I'd know the difference between teething gel and diaper cream, or that I'd have pictures of a baby on my phone, I would have thought they were insane. But I do. I have 43 photos of Elijah on my phone, and I've shown them to everyone from my barber to my accountant. I know that he likes his bottle warm but not hot, that he sleeps better when you play classical music, and that he laughs when you make that ridiculous face you think I haven't noticed. Despite everything, Harper smiled. "You notice that? I notice everything about him, about both of you." Rhett reached over and took her hand. "I can't promise I'll never make mistakes. I can't promise this will always be easy, but I can promise that I'm not going anywhere." "How can you be sure?" Rhett looked back at Elijah, still sleeping peacefully in his car seat, his little fist curled around the edge of his blanket. "Because for the first time in my adult life, I can't imagine being anywhere else." They sat quietly for a moment, hands linked across the center console. Outside, other families were coming and going from the apartment complex. Parents juggling groceries and diaper bags. Kids running ahead on sidewalks. The ordinary chaos of people building lives together. "I have a confession," Harper said suddenly. "What?" "I've been thinking about moving, getting a bigger place, maybe something with a yard, but I kept putting off looking because I didn't know. I didn't know what this was going to become. And now I think maybe I should look for a place with 3 bedrooms instead of 2. The suggestion was casual, almost offhand, but Rhett understood the magnitude of what she was offering. A place for him in their life, not just as a visitor but as a permanent fixture. A room of his own in the home they were building together. "I'd like that," he said quietly. Yeah. He squeezed her hand. "I'd like that a lot." Elijah stirred in his sleep, making the soft sounds that meant he would be waking up soon. Hungry, probably, and ready for his afternoon nap. The simple, predictable needs of a child who trusted that the people around him would take care of everything. Rhett realized he wanted to be worthy of that trust. More than that, he wanted to earn it every single day. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, jarring Rhett from the first decent sleep he'd had in weeks. Harper's name on his phone screen sent his heart racing before he even answered. "Rhett?" Her voice was strained, barely above a whisper. "I need help." He was already reaching for his clothes. "What's wrong?" "It's my mom. She had a stroke. I'm at Harborview Medical Center, and they're saying it's bad. I need to fly to Portland tonight, but I can't take Elijah on the plane with all the medical equipment they might need. And I don't know anyone else who—" "I'll be right there," Rhett interrupted, pulling on his shirt with one hand. "Don't worry about Elijah. I've got him." "Are you sure?" "It could be several days, maybe a week. You've never had him overnight by yourself. And he's been fussy lately because of his molars coming in and—" "Harper." Rhett's voice was calm, steady. "I've got him. Go be with your mom." The silence stretched for a moment, then Harper's voice came back thick with unshed tears. "Thank you." 30 minutes later, Rhett stood in Harper's living room while she packed a suitcase with shaking hands. Elijah was awake in his crib, sensing the tension in the apartment even though he couldn't understand its source. "His schedule is on the refrigerator," Harper said, stuffing clothes into her bag without really seeing them. "He gets cranky if his nap is too late, and he won't eat the green baby food, only the orange stuff. And if he gets really upset at night, sometimes walking around the apartment helps, but don't let him see outside or he'll think it's playtime." "Harper." Rhett caught her hand, stilling their frantic movement. "I know his routine. We'll be fine." She looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "What if something happens? What if I'm not here and he needs me, and then he'll have me?" The words came out more confident than Rhett felt, but he meant them completely. "I know I'm not you, but I love him too. I'll figure it out." The admission seemed to surprise them both. It was the first time Rhett had said the words out loud, the first time he'd acknowledged what had been growing in his chest for months. Harper's face crumpled, and for a moment she looked very young and very scared. "I don't know how to leave him." "You're not leaving him. You're trusting me with him. There's a difference. A car honked outside. Harper's ride to the airport. She grabbed her suitcase and headed for Elijah's room, lifting him from his crib for a long hug. He was sleepy and confused, reaching for her face with small hands. "Mama has to go help Grandma," she whispered against his hair. "But Daddy's going to take care of you, okay? Be good for Daddy." She handed Elijah to Rhett, and the baby immediately began to fuss, sensing that something was wrong. Harper kissed his forehead one more time, then stood on her toes to kiss Rhett's cheek. "Call me if anything happens. Anything at all. Go," Rhett said gently. "We'll be here when you get back." After she left, the apartment felt different. Quieter but more charged, like the air before a storm. Elijah was crying in earnest now, reaching toward the door where his mother had disappeared. "I know, buddy," Rhett murmured, bouncing him gently. "I know you want Mama, but it's just you and me for a while." The first day was manageable. Elijah was confused by his mother's absence, but Rhett managed to distract him with toys and books, with the silly songs he'd learned by watching Harper. They went to the park where Elijah crawled around on the grass and clapped at the ducks in the pond. By evening, Rhett was feeling cautiously optimistic. Then night fell. Elijah refused his bottle. He pushed away his favorite foods. When Rhett tried to put him in his crib, he screamed with an intensity that Rhett had never experienced. Not the normal fussing of a teething baby, but the heartbroken wail of a child who didn't understand where his mother had gone. Rhett tried everything. Walking, singing, different positions, different rooms, nothing worked. By midnight, they were both exhausted and frustrated. Elijah's face was red and streaked with tears, and Rhett felt like he was failing at the most important test of his life. At 1 a.m., in desperation, he called Harper. "How is he?" She answered immediately, and Rhett could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "Not great. He's been crying for hours. I've tried everything on your list and—" "Put me on speaker," Harper interrupted. Rhett did, holding the phone close to Elijah. Harper's voice filled the quiet apartment, soft and familiar. "Hi, sweet boy. Mama's here. I know you're sad and I'm sad too, but Daddy's taking such good care of you." Elijah's cries softened to hiccups, his head turning toward the sound of his mother's voice. "Can you sing to him?" Rhett asked. "That song you always hum?" Harper's voice came through the phone, wordless and soothing. The melody she'd hummed that first night in the hospital. Elijah gradually grew quiet, his body relaxing against Rhett's chest. "Better?" Harper asked when she finished. "Much. Thank you." Rhett settled onto the couch with Elijah, who was finally still. "How's your mom?" "Stable. She's going to need surgery tomorrow, but the doctors are optimistic." Harper's voice wavered slightly. "I should be there in case something goes wrong, but leaving him is... You did the right thing. Your mom needs you and Elijah needs you to not worry about him right now. We're okay." "Are you sure?" Rhett looked down at Elijah, who had fallen asleep against his chest, tiny fist curled in Rhett's shirt. "Yeah, we're okay." The next morning brought new challenges. Elijah woke up crying for his mother again, rejecting Rhett's attempts at comfort. But this time, Rhett was ready. He had Harper on video call during breakfast, letting Elijah see her face while he ate. He played recordings of her voice during nap time. He carried the phone with him throughout the day, keeping Harper connected even from 200 miles away. By the third day, they had found their rhythm. Elijah still missed his mother, but he had stopped fighting Rhett's care. He let Rhett change his diapers without squirming away. He ate his breakfast without throwing it on the floor. He even laughed when Rhett made funny faces during bath time. "You're getting good at this," Harper said during their evening video call. Elijah was on Rhett's lap, babbling at the screen and pointing at his mother's face. "I had good motivation," Rhett replied, adjusting his grip as Elijah tried to grab the phone. "How good?" Rhett met Harper's eyes through the screen. "Good enough that I never want to let either of you down again." Something shifted in Harper's expression, a softening that Rhett recognized but had never been the recipient of before. Trust, maybe, or something deeper. "I'll be home tomorrow night," she said. "Mom's surgery went well and my sister can take over for a while. How do you feel about that? Coming home, I mean." Harper smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, it looked genuine, like "I can't wait to see my family." Family. The word settled over Rhett like a warm coat, familiar and comfortable and exactly right. He looked down at Elijah, who had fallen asleep on his lap despite all the excitement of seeing his mother on the screen. For 5 days, Rhett had been the only parent Elijah had. He'd handled fevers and tantrums, sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. He'd sung lullabies and read picture books and learned that love wasn't just a feeling. It was a choice you made every single day, even when you were exhausted and overwhelmed and had no idea what you were doing. Especially then. Harper's key turned in the lock at 9:47 p.m., the sound barely audible over the soft jazz playing from the living room speakers. She stepped inside to find her apartment transformed, not dramatically, but in small ways that spoke of a man learning to make a space comfortable for a child. Elijah's toys were organized in neat bins. A baby gate had been installed at the top of the stairs. The coffee table had foam padding around its sharp edges. Rhett stood in the kitchen doorway, dish towel in his hands, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. Gone was the rigid posture of the boardroom, replaced by something softer, more accessible. His hair was slightly mussed, and there was a small stain on his shirt that looked suspiciously like baby food. "How is he?" Harper whispered, dropping her bags by the door. "Asleep, finally. He fought bedtime pretty hard. I think he was hoping you'd come back before he had to sleep again." Harper felt tears prick her eyes. 5 days. It was the longest she'd ever been away from Elijah, and every moment had felt like a small betrayal, even though she knew she'd made the right choice. "And how are you?" Rhett smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. Tired, humbled, covered in various bodily fluids. He paused, studying her face in the dim light. "How's your mom?" "Better. The surgery went well and she's already complaining about the hospital food, which the doctor says is a good sign." Harper moved closer, drawn by the domestic scene before her. "My sister will stay with her for the next few weeks." "Good. That's good." They stood there for a moment, separated by only a few feet, but feeling the weight of everything that had happened in her absence. Harper had left trusting Rhett to care for their son, but she'd returned to find something she hadn't expected. Evidence of a man who had not just survived the challenge, but embraced it. "Can I see him?" she asked. Together they crept to Elijah's room. He was sleeping soundly, one arm flung over his head, the other clutching his favorite stuffed elephant. Harper's heart clenched at the sight. He looked bigger somehow, as if 5 days had stretched into weeks. "He missed you," Rhett whispered. "But he was okay. We were okay. I can see that." Harper reached down to smooth Elijah's hair, careful not to wake him. "Thank you for everything. I know this wasn't what you signed up for when—" "Yes, it was." Rhett's voice was quiet but firm. "Maybe not at first, but yes, this is exactly what I signed up for." They moved back to the living room, where Harper finally noticed the other changes. A new bookshelf filled with children's books, a high-quality baby monitor on the counter, family photos that hadn't been there before, pictures of the three of them at the museum, at the park, during quiet moments at home. "You've been busy," she observed. "I realized I didn't have any pictures of us, of him. In my apartment, I mean. It seemed wrong somehow." Harper picked up one of the frames, a candid shot of Rhett reading to Elijah, both of them completely absorbed in the story. She didn't remember taking it, but there it was, proof of something she was still learning to believe. "Rhett," she began, then stopped. What she wanted to say felt too big, too important to risk saying wrong. "What is it?" "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." He straightened slightly, and she caught a glimpse of the careful businessman he'd been before all this started. "Okay. These past 5 days, taking care of Elijah by yourself, dealing with his tantrums and his tears and all the chaos that comes with a baby. Did any part of you think about how much easier your life was before? Did you miss it? The quiet, the control, the freedom to just leave when things got difficult?" Rhett was quiet for so long that Harper began to worry she'd pushed too hard, asked for more honesty than he was ready to give. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful, measured. "Yes," he said. "Wednesday morning, when he'd been crying for 2 hours straight and nothing I did helped, I thought about my old apartment, how quiet it was, how simple." Harper felt her heart sink, but Rhett continued. "And then he fell asleep in my arms and I realized something. Simple isn't the same as meaningful. Quiet isn't the same as peaceful. And control." He shook his head. "I spent so many years thinking control meant having power over everything around me. But real control is knowing that some things are worth giving up control for." "Like what?" "Like love, like family, like waking up every morning knowing that someone needs you. Not for what you can do or what you can provide, but just for who you are." Harper felt tears spill over, the emotional exhaustion of the past week finally catching up with her. "I was so scared," she whispered. Scared that this was too much, too fast. Scared that you'd realize what you were getting into and decide it wasn't worth it. Rhett closed the distance between them, pulling her into his arms with gentle certainty. She went willingly, letting herself lean into his strength for the first time since this whole journey began. Harper, look at me. She did, seeing something in his gray eyes that she'd been afraid to hope for. I'm not going anywhere. Not when things get hard. Not when they get messy. Not when you need someone to hold down the fort while you take care of your family. This is my family too now. You and Elijah. You're my family. Are you sure? Instead of answering with words, Rhett kissed her, soft and sure and full of promise, nothing like the desperate passion of that night in Austin. This was different, deeper, more intentional, a kiss that spoke of commitment and possibility, and the kind of love that grew not from impulse but from choice. When they broke apart, Harper rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. I found a house, she said quietly. What? While I was in Portland between hospital visits, I was looking at real estate listings online. I found a house in Wallingford. 3 bedrooms, big backyard, good schools nearby. She looked up at him. It's perfect for a family. Rhett's smile was soft and wondering. Yeah? Yeah, but it's expensive, and I'd need help with the down payment and... Done. You haven't even seen it. I don't need to. If you think it's right for us, then it's right.
Oh, you mean like
us.
the skins?
The word hung between them, simple and complex and full of possibility. Harper thought about the house she'd bookmarked on her phone, the big kitchen where they could make breakfast together, the playroom where Elijah could spread his toys across the floor, the master bedroom where she and Rhett could build something real and lasting. There's something else, she said. What? The application asks about family status. Married, single, partnered. She hesitated. I wasn't sure what to put. Rhett was quiet for a moment, and Harper felt her pulse quicken. Had she pushed too far again? Assumed too much? What do you want to put? He asked finally. I want to put that we're a family. However that looks, whatever that means legally or practically. I want us to be a family. So do I. Even if it means changing everything. Even if it means giving up the bachelor penthouse and the freedom to jet off to Barcelona on a whim. Harper. Rhett cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away the tears she didn't realize had fallen. I haven't been to Barcelona in 6 months. I haven't wanted to go anywhere that would take me away from you and Elijah. Everything already changed. I just finally caught up. From the bedroom came a soft cry. Elijah waking up, probably sensing his mother's return even in sleep. Harper moved toward the sound, but Rhett caught her hand. Together? He asked. Together. They walked to Elijah's room hand in hand, ready to comfort their son, ready to start the next chapter of their unexpected life. And for the first time since that morning in the conference room, Harper felt like they were exactly where they belonged. The house in Wallingford was everything Harper had promised and more. Built in the 1920s, it had the kind of character that came from decades of families making memories within its walls. Hardwood floors that creaked in familiar places, windows that caught the morning light just right, and a kitchen large enough for 3 people to move around without bumping into each other. Rhett stood in what would become Elijah's room, paint roller in hand, watching Harper tape the baseboards with meticulous precision. They'd chosen a warm sage green, gender neutral, Harper had said, though Rhett suspected she was already thinking ahead to possible siblings. The thought should have terrified him. 6 months ago, the idea of one child would have sent him running. Now, watching Elijah toddle around the empty room with his arms outstretched for balance, Rhett found himself imagining the space filled with toys, books, the comfortable chaos of a child's life. Hand me that brush, Harper called from the corner where she was cutting in around the window frame. Rhett obliged, their fingers brushing as he passed it to her. Such a simple touch, but it carried the weight of everything they'd built together. They moved around each other with easy familiarity now, partners in the truest sense. Dada up! Elijah had discovered that walking meant he could demand attention more effectively. He stood at Rhett's feet, arms raised, paint speckles somehow already on his shirt despite being nowhere near the actual painting. You're supposed to be helping, not getting in the way, Rhett said. But he set down his roller and lifted Elijah anyway. The boy immediately reached for the paintbrush in Harper's hand. No, sir, Harper laughed, moving it out of reach. You can help by staying clean and adorable. Mama! Elijah clapped his hands, delighted by his own cleverness. It was a scene so domestic, so normal, that Rhett had to pause to absorb it. This was his life now. Weekend mornings spent painting bedrooms and chasing a toddler around empty houses. Board meetings rescheduled around nap times. His assistant had stopped looking surprised when he left the office at 5:30. "I have something to tell you," Harper said, wiping paint from her hands on a rag. There was something in her tone that made Rhett look up sharply. Good something or concerning something? Potentially life-changing something. Rhett set Elijah down with his favorite toy truck and gave Harper his full attention. "I'm listening." Harper took a deep breath. "I got a job offer, a really good one. Senior analyst position at a tech firm downtown, 40% salary increase, full benefits, and..." She paused. "And they want me to start next month." "That's amazing," Rhett said, and meant it. "You've been wanting to move up from consulting work, but it would mean longer hours, especially at first, more travel, less flexibility with Elijah's schedule." Harper's voice carried the weight of a decision she'd clearly been wrestling with. "I wouldn't be able to drop everything if he gets sick, or handle all the pickup and drop-off duties at daycare." Rhett felt something click into place. "So you'd need a partner who could share that load." "I'd need a partner who wanted to share that load. Not just someone willing to help out when convenient, but someone who saw it as their responsibility too." "Harper." Rhett moved closer, careful not to step on Elijah, who was now driving his truck in elaborate circles around their feet. "Are you asking me if I'm ready to be a co-parent? Full-time, equal partnership, all-in co-parent? I guess I am." Rhett looked around the room they were painting for their son. Their son? When had he started thinking of Elijah that way so completely? When had this become not just something he was trying to do, but something he couldn't imagine not doing? "I'll need to make some changes," he said finally. "Delegate more at the company, maybe bring in another partner to handle some of the travel. I can't be a real co-parent while still trying to run everything myself." Harper's face lit up with hope. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." Rhett reached for her hands, paint-stained and beautiful. "Take the job, Harper. Build your career. I've got this." "We've got this," she corrected. "We've got this," he agreed. Elijah chose that moment to stand up and take 3 wobbling steps toward Harper before falling backward onto his diaper-cushioned bottom. Both adults froze. "Did he just..." Harper breathed. "Walk." He just walked. Rhett felt ridiculously proud, as if Elijah's motor development was somehow a reflection of his own parenting skills. "Come here, baby," Harper called, kneeling down with her arms outstretched. "Come to Mama." Elijah pulled himself up on Rhett's leg, looked at Harper, looked at the distance between them, and took 4 deliberate steps before tumbling into her arms. "Oh my God, he's walking." Harper laughed, tears streaming down her face. "Rhett, he's walking. I see it." Rhett felt his own eyes fill. Such a small thing, really. Children walked every day, but this was their child, taking his first independent steps in the room they were preparing for him, in the house they were making into a home. "Try it again," Harper said, setting Elijah back on his feet and moving him halfway between herself and Rhett. "Go to Daddy." Elijah looked at Rhett with determination that was startling on such a young face. Then he took off, 1 foot in front of the other, arms outstretched for balance, covering the 6 feet between them like a tiny drunken sailor. Rhett caught him in his arms, lifting him high in the air while Elijah squealed with delight. "That's my boy," Rhett said, the words coming from somewhere deep in his chest. "That's my boy." Later, after they'd cleaned up the paint supplies and put Elijah down for his nap, Harper found Rhett standing in the backyard, looking out at the space that would soon be filled with a swing set and sandbox. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, sliding her arms around his waist from behind. "I was thinking about the day you walked into my office," Rhett said, leaning back against her warmth. "How terrified I was. How convinced I was that my life was over. And now I realize my life was just beginning." He turned in her arms, looking down at her paint-smudged face, her hair escaping from its ponytail, her eyes bright with happiness and possibility. "Harper, I need to ask you something." "What?" Rhett took a step back, then did something that surprised them both. He dropped to one knee right there in their new backyard, with no ring and no plan and no prepared speech. "Marry me." Harper's hands flew to her mouth. "Rhett, I know this isn't traditional. I know we didn't meet the traditional way or fall in love the traditional way. I know I should probably have a ring and better timing and... Yes, and I should probably wait until we're more settled and... What? Yes." Harper dropped to her knees in front of him, grass stains be damned. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to all of it. Yes to building this life together. Yes to being partners in everything. Yes to giving Elijah the family he deserves. Yes to putting up with me when I inevitably mess this up. Yes to that too." Rhett kissed her then, tasting salt from her tears and something that might have been joy. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Harper laughed. "We're going to have to tell Elijah he slept through Daddy's proposal. We'll make it up to him. We'll have plenty of firsts to share with him." "Like what?" "Like walking down the aisle. Like teaching him to ride a bike in this backyard. Like helping him with homework at that kitchen table." Rhett looked back at the house. Their house. Solid and welcoming in the afternoon light. Like watching him grow up in a home where he never has to question whether he's wanted. Harper followed his gaze, and Rhett could see her envisioning the same future he was. Birthday parties and Christmas mornings, scraped knees and bedtime stories. The million small moments that would add up to a childhood filled with love and security. "He's so lucky," she said softly, "to have you as his father." "I'm the lucky one," Rhett corrected. "Both of you saved me from a life I didn't even realize was empty." From inside the house came the sound of Elijah waking from his nap, calling for them in the way that meant he was ready to explore the world again. Together they stood and walked toward the sound, toward their son, toward the life they were building one day at a time. And for the first time since this all began, Rhett wasn't afraid of what came next. He was excited for it. 18 months later, Rhett stood at the kitchen window of their Wallingford home, watching Elijah chase bubbles in the backyard while Harper set up his second birthday party. The morning sun caught the soap bubbles as they drifted across the grass, each one a tiny rainbow that made their son squeal with delight. "Dada! Dada, look!" Elijah pointed at a particularly large bubble, his vocabulary now including dozens of words that Rhett had helped teach him. "I see it, buddy," Rhett called back, marveling at how natural the response had become. The house hummed with the comfortable chaos of family life. Balloons tied to chairs, a dining room table covered with gift wrap and scissors, the sound of Harper's sister laughing as she helped arrange flowers. It was exactly the kind of scene Rhett had spent 40 years avoiding, and now he couldn't imagine wanting to be anywhere else. "You're going to be late for your own party if you don't get dressed," Harper said, appearing beside him with Elijah's birthday outfit draped over her arm. She was wearing a yellow sundress that made her skin glow, her hair longer now and touched with highlights that caught the light, the engagement ring on her finger, a simple solitaire they'd chosen together, sparkled as she gestured toward their son. "I'm dressed," Rhett protested, looking down at his khakis and polo shirt. "You're dressed for a casual Saturday. This is dressed for your son's birthday party where your business partner is coming and so is my entire family, and about 15 other parents who are going to judge our hosting skills." Rhett laughed, pulling her closer. "When did I start caring what other parents think?" "About the same time you started reading parenting blogs at midnight and researching the best preschools in the district." She wasn't wrong. The transformation had been gradual but complete. The man who once lived for quarterly reports now lived for bedtime stories. The executive who had measured success in stock prices now measured it in his son's laughter. "Daddy!" Elijah had discovered the sliding door and was now pressed against the glass, tiny handprints smearing the surface Harper had cleaned that morning. "Coming, birthday boy," Rhett called, but Harper caught his arm. "Before the chaos starts," she said, her voice suddenly serious, "I need to tell you something." Rhett felt his stomach tighten. In his experience, "I need to tell you something" rarely led to good news. "What is it?" Harper's smile was radiant. "I'm pregnant." The words hit him like a physical force. Rhett stared at her, processing the information that would once again change everything about their carefully constructed life. "Pregnant," he repeated, as if saying it would help him understand. "About 8 weeks along. I found out yesterday, but I wanted to wait until after Elijah's party to tell you. I thought." Rhett silenced her with a kiss that was fierce and joyful and completely consuming. When they broke apart, both breathless, Harper laughed. "So you're happy?" "Happy?" Rhett lifted her off her feet, spinning her around the kitchen while she shrieked with laughter. "Harper, I'm terrified and thrilled and completely overwhelmed and so deeply happy I don't have words for it, even though this means starting over. Sleepless nights, diapers, bottles, all of it again, especially because of that." Rhett set her down but kept his hands on her waist. "Do you know what I was thinking about this morning? I was thinking about how fast it goes. How Elijah went from being this tiny thing who couldn't hold his head up to running around the backyard in what feels like 5 minutes. And I realized I don't want to miss a second of it this time. I want to be there for every milestone, every middle of the night feeding, every moment of this baby's life." Harper's eyes filled with tears. "Even if it means more chaos? Less control over your schedule?" "Harper, look around." Rhett gestured at their kitchen, cluttered with party supplies and family photos and the beautiful disorder of a life fully lived. I gave up control the day you walked into my conference room. Best decision I ever made. From outside came the sound of cars arriving, followed by the excited voices of family members greeting each other. The party was beginning, and their quiet moment was about to be invaded by the loving chaos of extended family and friends. "We should probably go welcome people," Harper said, but she made no move to leave his arms. In a minute, Rhett cupped her face in his hands, studying the features he'd memorized over the past year and a half. "I need to say something first." "What?" 2 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be standing in a kitchen covered in birthday decorations, planning a preschool tour for next week and getting excited about a second baby, I would have called them insane. And now I realize that everything I thought I wanted, the control, the solitude, the freedom to answer to no one, it was just fear. Fear of needing someone, fear of being needed, fear of loving something so much that losing it would destroy me. Harper's thumb traced the line of his jaw. "And now you're not afraid anymore?" Rhett looked out the window at Elijah, who had abandoned the bubbles in favor of examining an ant on the patio. Their son, their stubborn, brilliant, beautiful son, who had taught Rhett what it meant to love unconditionally. "Oh, I'm still terrified," he said honestly. "Every single day. Terrified that I'll mess up, that I'll let you both down, that something will happen to our family. But I've learned something important." "What's that?" "Being afraid of losing something means it's worth having. And what we have, Harper, this family we've built, this life we're creating, it's worth everything." The doorbell rang, followed by Elijah's excited shriek from the backyard as he spotted his first party guests through the fence. "Ready?" Harper asked, smoothing down her dress and checking her reflection in the window. "For the party? For baby number 2? For whatever comes next?" "All of it." Rhett took her hand, intertwining their fingers as they walked toward the door. Behind them, the kitchen table groaned under the weight of presents wrapped in bright paper. Ahead of them, their backyard filled with the people who had become their chosen family. And in the future, somewhere between now and the holidays, another child who would call him Daddy. The thought should have overwhelmed him. Instead, it felt like coming home. "Rhett," Harper paused at the door. "I love you. Not just for who you've become, but for who you chose to become, for deciding that love was worth the risk." "Harper Calloway," Rhett said, testing out the name she'd carry after their wedding next month. "I love you too, both of you, all of you." They opened the door together, greeting their guests with genuine joy, their son running circles around their legs as he showed off his new shoes to anyone who would look. The afternoon stretched ahead of them, full of cake and presents, and the beautiful chaos of a toddler's birthday party. But for Rhett, the real celebration was quieter, more profound. It was the celebration of a man who had learned that the greatest success wasn't measured in profit margins or stock prices, but in the trust of a child who called him Daddy, and the love of a woman who had shown him what he was capable of becoming. He had built an empire of glass and steel, but this was his legacy, this messy, wonderful, completely imperfect family that had saved him from a life he hadn't even realized was empty. The party swirled around them, friends and family celebrating Elijah's second year of life. But Rhett found himself already looking forward to all the birthdays to come, all the milestones and challenges and ordinary miracles that awaited them. He had spent 40 years running from exactly this kind of responsibility. Now he couldn't wait to embrace it all. Full circle. 5 years later, the Seattle Children's Museum buzzed with the same energy Rhett remembered from that first visit, but everything else had changed. He sat on a bench near the water play area, watching 3-year-old Lily carefully pour water from one container to another, while 7-year-old Elijah explained the concept of displacement to her, with the patient authority of an older brother. "She's not going to understand fluid dynamics, Eli," Rhett called out, amused by his son's academic approach to play. "She will if I explain it right," Elijah replied, his gray eyes serious behind the glasses he'd needed since kindergarten. "Look, Lily, the water moves because it needs space." Lily, who had Harper's auburn hair and Rhett's stubborn streak, ignored her brother completely and dumped an entire cup of water on the floor instead. She clapped at the splash, delighted by her own rebellion. "That works too," Rhett laughed, grabbing paper towels from a nearby dispenser. Harper appeared beside him, balancing 6-month-old James on her hip, while juggling a diaper bag and 2 sippy cups. Motherhood had made her more beautiful, not less. There was a confidence in her movements now, a quiet strength that came from knowing she could handle anything life threw at her. How long before we need to leave for
the one
Elijah's
that got in
game?
the van,
She asked, settling beside Rhett on the bench. 20
he didn't
minutes.
die because the
Lily,
other
come get
one
dried
had
off, sweetheart.
self-res,
Their
and it
daughter
was just
toddled
like,
over,
I
soaking wet and
figured I had
completely
time to just reload
unconcerned
my
about it.
shotgun and
Rhett
finish
wrapped her in a
him,
towel,
and then
marveling
worry
at how
about
such a
him
small person could
later.
create such magnificent
I should've
chaos
just
everywhere she
taken
went.
him out with my
Daddy,
AR,
will you come watch
in
me
the
play
van and
baseball?
then gone around
Elijah
and
asked,
taken him out
having
with the,
abandoned his lesson on
I
water
was getting
displacement.
shot from
Wouldn't
the
miss
other
it, buddy.
angle, too,
Think you'll get to pitch
from the
today?
hill.
Coach says maybe. I've been practicing my curveball. At 7, Elijah was already showing signs of the analytical mind he'd inherited from both parents, but tempered with a sweetness that was entirely his own. He worried about his teammates, shared his snacks without being asked, and had once spent an entire afternoon teaching Lily how to tie her shoes, even though she kept untying them immediately afterward. Can I come too? Lily asked, bouncing on her toes despite still being wrapped in the towel. Of course, Harper said, smoothing down their daughter's damp hair. But we'll need to sit quietly during the game. Lily nodded solemnly, a promise they all knew she'd forget the moment something interesting happened. The drive to the baseball field was filled with the comfortable chatter of family life. Elijah explaining the rules of baseball to Lily, James babbling contentedly in his car seat, Harper reviewing her mental checklist of everything they'd need for the afternoon. Rhett listened to it all with the kind of deep contentment he'd never imagined possible. At the field, they found seats in the bleachers with the other families. Rhett recognized most of them now, parents whose children had grown up alongside Elijah, who had become friends through shared carpools and birthday parties, and the gradual intimacy of raising children in the same community. Rhett, Mike, another father from Elijah's class, called out as they climbed the bleachers. How's the new baby sleeping? Better than his siblings did at that age, Rhett replied, settling James in the infant carrier beside him, though that's not saying much. The conversation flowed easily. Discussions about summer camps and preschool applications, gentle complaints about sleepless nights and endless laundry, the kind of mundane family talk that had once seemed foreign and now felt like home. As the game began, Rhett found himself splitting his attention between Elijah on the field and his daughters beside him. Lily had lasted exactly 3 minutes of quiet sitting before deciding she needed to investigate the concession stand, requiring Harper to chase after her with the patient persistence of someone well-versed in toddler management. She's got your energy, Harper said when they returned, Lily clutching a bag of popcorn like a trophy. She's got my tendency to ignore instructions when they don't suit her, Rhett corrected, making room for them on the bench. Elijah came up to bat in the 4th inning, his small frame dwarfed by the oversized helmet and uniform. Rhett felt his chest tighten with the familiar mixture of pride and anxiety that came with watching his children navigate the world independently. Come on, Eli, Harper called out, and their son turned to wave at them from the batter's box. The first pitch was too high, the second, too far outside, but the third pitch was perfect, right down the middle, and Elijah connected with a solid crack that sent the ball sailing into left field. That's my boy, Rhett shouted, jumping to his feet as Elijah rounded first base and headed for second. The other parents cheered as Elijah slid safely into second base, his face beaming with pride as he looked up at his family in the stands. Lily had abandoned her popcorn to clap enthusiastically, and even James seemed to sense the excitement gurgling happily in his carrier. Good hit, Harper said, squeezing Rhett's hand. He's been practicing in the backyard every day after school. I know, I can hear you two out there coaching him through his swing. Rhett smiled at the memory. Those evening practice sessions had become sacred time. Just him and Elijah, working on fundamentals while dinner cooked inside and the Seattle sun hung low in the sky. Sometimes Lily would join them, attempting to hit the ball with a plastic bat twice her size. Sometimes Harper would watch from the kitchen window, James sleeping on her shoulder. It was ordinary and perfect, and exactly what Rhett had never known he wanted. The game ended with Elijah's team winning 7-4, a victory celebrated with the enthusiasm that only children could bring to recreational sports. As they gathered their belongings and prepared to head home, Elijah ran up to them, still glowing with the excitement of his successful hit. Did you see me get to second base? He asked breathlessly. We saw everything, Rhett assured him, ruffling his son's hair. I'm proud of you. Can we practice more when we get home? After dinner, Harper interjected. And after homework. And after we give Lily a bath, Rhett added, looking at their daughter, who had somehow managed to get popcorn salt in her hair despite eating less than half the bag. The drive home was quieter, all 3 children finally settling into the peaceful exhaustion that came after a full day. Rhett glanced in the rearview mirror at his family. Harper sorting through the diaper bag. Elijah staring out the window with the contemplative expression he wore when processing the day's events. Lily fighting sleep despite her obvious tiredness. And James sleeping peacefully in his carrier. This was his life now. Not the sterile perfection of his bachelor years, but this beautiful chaos of family. Homework help and bedtime stories. Birthday parties and baseball games. The constant juggling of 3 children's needs and schedules and dreams. It was messy and exhausting and completely overwhelming. It was perfect. As they pulled into their driveway, Rhett caught sight of their house, painted a warm blue now, with a front porch that held bikes and chalk drawings and evidence of children who felt safe enough to leave their mark on the world. The same house where he'd proposed to Harper in the backyard, where they'd brought each baby home from the hospital, where they'd celebrated birthdays and holidays and the million small milestones that made up a family's history. Daddy? Elijah's voice broke through his reverie. Yeah, buddy? When I grow up, will I be a good dad like you? The question caught Rhett off guard, hitting him somewhere deep in his chest. He thought about the man he'd been 7 years ago, closed off, afraid of connection, convinced that love was a weakness he couldn't afford. That man would never have believed he could become someone a child would aspire to emulate. If you want to be, Rhett said finally. Being a good dad isn't about being perfect, Eli. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. It's about putting the people you love first, even when it means changing everything about your life. Is that what you did? Rhett looked at Harper, who was listening with the kind of attention that meant she understood the significance of this moment. Their eyes met in the rearview mirror and she smiled. The same smile that had captivated him that night in Austin, but deeper now, richer with shared history and unconditional love. Yeah, Rhett said, his voice thick with emotion. That's exactly what I did, and it was the best decision I ever made. Later, after dinner and homework and baths, after bedtime stories and final drinks of water and the endless negotiations that came with getting 3 children to sleep, Rhett and Harper collapsed onto their couch in the living room that bore the cheerful destruction of family life. Successful day? Harper asked, curling up against his side. The best kind of successful, Rhett replied, pulling her closer. Chaotic, unpredictable, completely exhausting, perfect. Even when Lily dumped an entire cup of water on the museum floor. Especially then, they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the house settle around them. Somewhere upstairs, one of the children stirred and then settled back to sleep. The dishwasher hummed in the kitchen. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic on the main road. Do you ever think about how we got here? Harper asked quietly. All the time. Rhett traced circles on her shoulder, marveling at how natural the gesture had become. Sometimes I can't believe it's real, that this is actually my life. Any regrets? Only one. Harper lifted her head to look at him, and Rhett could see a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. I regret that it took me so long to find you, he said. I regret all the years I spent thinking this kind of happiness was impossible, or that I didn't deserve it. I regret that I almost missed it completely, but you didn't miss it. No, Rhett agreed, thinking about that day 7 years ago when Harper had walked into his conference room with Elijah in her arms. I didn't miss it, thanks to a brave woman who decided to give a selfish man a chance to become something better. You were never selfish, Harper protested. You were scared. There's a difference. Maybe, but you saved me anyway. We saved each other. Outside, Seattle continued its endless rhythm, a city of dreamers and builders, of people creating lives and families and legacies that would outlast any corporate empire. And in their house in Wallingford, Rhett Calloway held his wife close and listened to the sound of their children sleeping, knowing that he had built something more valuable than any fortune. He had built a home, a family, a love that would last forever. And for a man who had once thought he wanted nothing more than to be left alone, there was no greater success than that. What does it take to transform a life completely? Sometimes it's not a grand gesture or a moment of revelation. Sometimes it's the simple courage to say yes when love shows up at your door, carrying the future in its arms. Have you ever had the chance to choose love over fear? What would you risk for the possibility of a family you never knew you wanted? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.